Good morning, I'm Caralee.
And I'm Stacy.
And we are North Texas Networkers, a show about introducing people across the DFW network. And we are excited to be here today.
We are, and we've had a great summer so far. Hope everybody else is as well. And glad to be here on our podcast this afternoon. It's brought to you by...
It is brought to us by Craig Schrank with Willow Bend Mortgage, and he gets your loan done efficiently, quickly, and in a great way. Yep. Love that guy.
Thanks,
so appreciate him as well. So what I'm really excited about, though, is how far our guest came today.
Yeah, it's nice when people want to come see us. We love it.
So she came from Georgia, has 4 kids that also attended the University of Georgia. And, you know, she writes textbooks for homeschools.
Very neat. I like that.
A #1 award-winning book. So we'll talk to her about that. She writes anything from chemistry, human anatomy, to zoology, botany, and you're going to learn all about that today. But not only are you going to learn about that, you're going to learn about how interesting she is, because she's not your typical writer. She's vivacious, she's fun, and she actually has a master's in creative writing. So we'll talk with her about that this morning as well.
That sounds amazing.
So welcome, Jeannie Fulbright.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay.
All the way from Georgia.
All the way from Georgia.
I should qualify that I am from Texas. I went to the University of Texas. Both me and my husband did. And he went to Baylor Law School, and we lived here in Dallas for about 6 years before we moved to, well, we're in Georgia now, so. Yeah.
Well, so Jeannie's husband actually roomed with my husband at the University of Texas as well. So we've been friends a long time, so really glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, I was at your wedding.
Yes, you were. I was not at hers because I didn't know her then.
So it was pre-Jeff and Caralee, but post-Jeannie and Jeff.
Yes.
You have that right.
Well, we are glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about your family, and you said you know, kind of from Texas area, but tell us about your family.
So 2 of my kids were born here in Dallas. I have 4 children, as Caralee said. I have a daughter who is 28 now, I think, and she and her husband live in Washington, D.C. She was the youngest youngest female editor to be hired by CNN. She got that job pretty soon after she graduated from UGA, journalism school. So she's a photo editor, and then I have 3 kids that are currently in college at UGA. Oh. So, and they all went there on scholarship. So
those are some pretty big chunks to knock off the list each year that they graduate.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. It's going to be fun to get them all out of the, you know, off the payroll.
Yes,
100%.
Seems like they're very successful.
So, I mean, one of the things I mentioned in my intro was that you have an award-winning book. Tell us which one out of all your subjects is your #1 book.
Well, the #1 book that I would say sells the most is Human Anatomy. So my books are all for elementary kids. They're K through 6. And essentially the way homeschoolers educate their children typically is they choose a curriculum that they can use with all the children in an age range. So if you have a 1st grader and a 6th grader, you can choose one subject in my book, of my books, and I have astronomy, botany, zoology 1, 2, and 3, which covers all the animals, chemistry, physics, and anatomy and physiology. Anatomy and physiology is the #1 selling book. So, wow. And you would use it with all your children. So it's written to the kid, and so it's kind of the way I write the books is very engaging, where I'm teaching the children basically everything they need to know. There's no teacher's manual, so the teacher learns along with the kids. And I have audiobooks and there's workbooks, we call them notebooking journals, that go along with them.
So interestingly enough, she and I were talking in the car on the way over here, and she was telling me that a kid ran up to her at one of her talks, right? Because she talks all across the country as well, but ran up to her and said, "Hi, you're my science teacher." So that's how much they think about her.
They consider me their science teacher,
nice.
Especially those who use the audiobooks, because I'm the one who reads the audiobooks, and so so the kids will be sitting in I go to conferences all over the country, and the kids will come in and sit with their parents. I talk to parents about how to homeschool and the best way to educate children, and these kids, they hear my voice and I know who that is. That's my science teacher. So
that's very
it's
cool.
Fun.
Well, what led you down this path of writing textbooks for homeschool?
And that's a great question. I always planned to be a writer. I did not plan to write science textbooks. It was not on my list. But what happened was my son, when he was about 7 years old, I believe, he really wanted to learn about astronomy. And I went to the library and got a ton of just beautiful astronomy children's books. But the problem that we found is that most science books are written by scientists who probably didn't get very high marks in English. They're not creative writers. That's just not their gift. And so as soon as I started reading them, my kids' eyes just glazed over. They were just facts and information, really not written in an engaging way. And so then I searched all over to try to find something, and I thought, you know what? I'm a writer. I'm a great researcher. I'm going to write an astronomy book for them, for all my kids together. And then that was back when the internet was kind of new. I mean, pretty new as far as being worldwide and everybody having access to it. It was like the year 2000. And so I was talking to people online, you know, remember the message boards, how we lived on message boards back then? And everybody, I told them what I was doing, and they said, oh, please, can I have one? Because there really wasn't a lot of homeschool material out there at that time. And so I kind of got in early before, you know, this huge homeschool splash has happened and there's so much curriculum available. And I wrote the book, and then so I printed up copies for people, and I sold it basically at cost. And then a publisher got a hold of one of them, and he said, I want to publish this, and I want you to write more, and the rest is history.
Well, and you used to do a lot of marketing for your books and things like that ahead of time. And, you know, I know your heart because I've known you a long time, but tell us about the instance where you had some criticism and some...
Okay, so one of the things, you know, learning how to market, that was all, you know, as we all, when we start a business, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to market. And one of the things that I did when I completed a book and went to the publisher is I would send out a press release. And so I learned how to write a press release. And one time after I finished my second botany book, second zoology book, we call it Zoology 2, and it's essentially about all the sea creatures. It just takes you from whales all the way across the spectrum to, you know, sea worms. So, and I sent out a press release, and my books are written from a Christian perspective. They're, you know, I mention God, I talk about God, you know, when we talk about something that's happening, some interesting, fascinating fact about an animal or how, you know, flowers create seeds, I always point them to the designer of creation. You know, this is how God made flowers. Isn't it amazing how God made the whale to do this, or the whale's teeth, or the baleen, all that. And so I mentioned that they were creation-based, you know, Christian science books, and I had Google alerts back then. It was a long time ago. But
I still do.
Yeah. And so immediately I saw all these Google alerts coming in, and my press release had gotten into the hands of somebody who really felt very strongly that you should never mix God and science. They felt that God should not be mentioned in a science book. And so I came to a message board where all these people were furious that I was mentioning God in my science books. And they told each other, everybody go onto Amazon and give her a terrible review. And so I screenshotted that, and I started getting tons of one-star reviews on Amazon. And all my books have been 5-star, 4.5, 5-star reviews since the beginning. And I saw all these really negative reviews, and some of the things they were saying, it was very obvious that they hadn't read the book. Because my books are very intensive, deep science. We go through a subject very intensely, rather than going through like topical, where you talk about a bunch of different science topics. You go deep into one field. And they acted like there was no science in there, it was just all God. And so I thought, okay, these people haven't read it. And I sent it to Amazon. I mean, it was just, people were very angry, and I just didn't understand, you know, the anger and the need to write these negative reviews. But Amazon removed most of them, but it kind of made me a little bit fearful, just knowing that people could find out where I live, and I don't know I don't know their motive. I don't know where their thoughts are, and you just don't know other people. And so I actually stopped sending out press releases when I release a new book. So that was that was definitely a hurdle I had to jump over.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. But I am actually creating other products right now. I'm creating a preschool science series. Now this one isn't actually going to be creation-based or mention the Lord God in it all, because I really want to get it into just into the school system, and obviously only private schools can carry my books. And this is going to be a multicultural book where I have these 4 best friends, these little kids that live on a street together, and they go on adventures and learn science concepts on these adventures, and they're always seeing some evil happening, something evil that they have to foil the plot, and the plot is they have to foil this evil person's doings, and it's just going to be a really fun book, and there's a bunch of different cultural children in there, and it's just going to be.
Is that the one that has time travel in it too that you're adding in?
No, actually that is my history series that I finished my first book. I'm waiting for my illustrator to get my illustrations back and get that published. But it's I call it it's called the Rumble Tumble into Time series. So the children, there's a dog named Rumble, and he is constantly getting caught up in their dad's time machine, and the kids are always being sent back into time, and so there's some adventure trying to get back home from their time machine. So
it also sounds like a great TV show. Have you ever been approached to do anything like that?
I haven't. Actually, the first book in the series hasn't been released yet, but I do hope that would be really fun.
Because even as I'm listening to you, I'm like, ooh, I'd watch that.
I know, I was just thinking how cute a little series it would be.
Yeah.
For sure.
What a creative mind. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun. I love that.
So I think homeschool has really come a long way. I mean, you have a lot of people over the years who are really resistant to it.
Yes.
And I mean, I can even say myself, when it first came out, I'm like, well, why would you don't want me as your teacher, number one. So I always kind of wonder how you get around that. Like, I'm not a good teacher, so how do I teach my child at home? But then you've seen all of these things like you're doing that makes it easier for parents to be able to do that. But I think it's also changed because of COVID. So tell us a little bit about how you've seen things change since you first got into homeschooling to now.
Well, I think the conferences are back on, so I'm traveling a lot now and talking to homeschoolers, and there are so many brand new homeschoolers that decided after the whole Zoom school thing went down, they decided that they would like to try homeschooling in a different way. So Zoom school and doing like an online class is not the same as using homeschool-based curriculum, which is actually written to the student. The parent isn't really the teacher so much as a learner alongside the child. So the curriculum is written in such a way that everybody sits down and learns together. They're reading the material together, or they're watching a video where they're being taught the material. And there's a lot of different homeschool curricula out there, but it's easier to choose homeschool curriculum when you're homeschooling, rather than having somebody else choosing the curriculum. Because I feel like, every child is unique, and I feel like their education should be unique as well. We should focus on their interests. We should, if your child loves animals, choose curriculum that actually goes deeper into animals, rather than making them study a bunch of other stuff that they're not super interested in right now. So I believe in really pursuing their interests and just enriching their lives. One of my favorite things to talk to parents about is making sure that your children love learning. If your children love learning, then they will be lifelong learners, and they will pursue life with more passion and more excitement, because they are not learning to score well on a test. They're learning to know, and that's the most important thing, because if we make education about learning for a test or a quiz or a worksheet, then we've hijacked the purpose for learning. The purpose for learning is no longer about having knowledge and being interested in the subject that you're learning. And so my books, we have questions that we ask the children at the end of each chapter, but we don't have tests, because a parent, when you're homeschooling your own children, you don't need a test. You know what they know. You have conversations with them. Just you know, whenever you're, it's
And it's so just a few of you, so it's not like you're in a classroom of 20-something.
exactly.
And what their interests are. You know,
Yes.
if they're not really interested in, you know, whales, but they are in astronomy, then
Yes.
that's a focus.
Exactly.
That's nice.
Exactly. And they may be interested in whales next year.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of go with what their interests are. And I think that's kind of the beauty of homeschooling is you know your children the best. And as far as thinking that you're not a good teacher, I'm sure you taught your son so much before he stepped into a school classroom. That's the same way as homeschooling. It's not, you know, you're not sitting at a desk in front of a classroom. You're just teaching them the natural way that you taught them from babyhood to preschool or elementary school. So it's just a natural kind of more natural setting. You just sit on the couch and learn together rather than
Kind of like what we're doing today.
exactly. There you go.
Are there any subjects that you haven't written about yet that are kind of out there in your thought process?
Well, the one book that I have not written is Earth Science. My publisher did put out an Earth Science book, but it is not written by me.
Yeah.
So but I don't think I'm going to pursue that subject because I'm really excited about this preschool series.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this historical fiction. And what's really fun about those is that they are fiction, and I have a master's in creative writing with a focus on fiction, and so
Oh,
I'm
perfect
finally
fit.
doing what I
gonna be so
always
fun.
wanted to do is write fiction.
Only took all those years to get there,
Yes,
right?
exactly, exactly.
Well, but everything you learned along the way is what's going to make it even better.
Absolutely. I know. I always wondered, why did I study science at the University of Texas? And then I found out why. You know, there was always a reason for everything. So
Well, and you're just, I mean, I can tell how much you love it.
yeah, it is.
Definitely.
It's really fun. It's just been a real delight. So.
What are your children pursuing in their college degrees?
So my oldest, as I said, she got a photojournalism degree from UGA, and so she is a editor at CNN. And then my boys, I have an oldest daughter, and then two boys after that, and they are both computer science majors
Okay.
at UGA. And then my youngest daughter is marketing.
So your daughter at Gigi, right?
Yes.
She broke her hand and had to have like 8 pins put in it.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to be here. We had to reschedule this,
Yep.
but that would be the weekend that she did that.
Aw.
Being a good, fun college.
Yeah, she was a cheerleader.
Retreat.
And was just out on the beach with her friends and decided, I'm just going to do a back handspring. And usually that's just nothing for her.
Everyday
But
deal,
for
yeah.
some reason, she's
On the
put her
sand might have been some of the reason.
Yeah, definitely. Slammed down wrong. And so she wasn't even going to go. All her friends were like, you're fine, you're fine. She had no idea it was broken. She just thought she just kind of bruised it. And then so it wasn't until a few days later she was at school and she said, I'm going to go and get an x-ray. So
Goodness.
So does she, because her job's pretty interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about what she does?
CNN.
The CNN one.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So she is she works on the politics page, but actually, since most of everything that's going on right now is politics, she pretty much does all the photos for the web page for CNN. So when you go onto the CNN web page, any picture you see there is a picture that she has chosen, and you know, there's all these photos that they look through to try to find an image to go along with the story. And so that's her job.
I think that would be a fun job. But yeah, I was a journalism major, so that might be
You
why I
were?
would think that. But yes.
Yeah, it is fun. She loves it, and sometimes she gets to go out and do a shoot and you know, photograph the things that are going on. So she's actually a photographer. That's, you know, first and foremost. And so she loves when she gets to go out and go out on the field and do a field
It's fun.
shoot.
That is fun,
So-
for sure. So what do you guys do when it's just downtime and you get to play, and what are your interests outside of work?
Well, I would say that my personal number one interest is gardening. I have a very, I would say, elaborate garden in my backyard, and it's
I wish we had pictures of it.
I know,
That would have been fun to show.
So there's some pictures on my Facebook page or my Instagram, but my garden was recently certified by the National Wildlife Federation as a certified wildlife habitat. So you have to go through
Wow.
different things to.
Yeah, I think your yard looks better than mine.
Well, sometimes it gets a little wild.
I'll
you
just
know?
be happy to get rid of my dead bushes this month.
Yeah,
From
from
the
the Stormageddon, is that right?
Snowmageddon.
Snowmageddon.
Oh, that's right.
if I get
Y'all
that
have
right.
it bad here.
We did. And so what is the certified garden? I mean, that just...
So it needs to the garden needs to be, it needs to have nectar plants for butterflies. It needs to have like berries and stuff for other animals. I have a grapevine in the backyard, and so when it grows I actually have 2 grapevines, and one grows along the border of the garden, and so there's a lot of grapes for them to eat, and so it just needs to be, has to have a water source, something that a place for animals to shelter. Just everything has to be, it has to be organic, and it has to be a place where wildlife finds shelter and a place to eat and live and play.
So do you just have all kinds of things in your yard?
Yes, I do. It is just.
So what do you love and what annoys you?
Well,
You gotta have a little bit of both, right?
Gardening was new for me, and so I think I planted too many things, trying to fill it in, and then things are outgrowing themselves, and so I'm constantly having to dig up plants and find another location for them. I think that's just part of gardening, is always changing the location of plants as they get too big and they start causing shade for plants that need sun, and so you're just always in the garden trying to make sure that everybody's happy. So it's a big job, but I love it. It's just, to me, it's so relaxing. And one of the cool things that I like to do is when I'm weeding, because it's organic garden, so I don't use any fertilizer or any chemicals on it. So I have to do a lot of weeding, and so that's a good time to listen to podcasts.
So you write books, you've homeschooled, you garden, and you have 4 kids.
Yep, I didn't garden when I had 4 kids.
Okay, but how do you do all of this? I mean, even without the gardening, I mean, you're going across the country talking.
But homeschooling, I would say that was a real challenge, is finding balance, being a homeschool mom, and obviously a stay-at-home mom, and working. Well, I wasn't home a lot because I was traveling. I travel when the conference season hits around March, and you're speaking from March until August, probably, twice, 3 times, sometimes every weekend. And so I was gone a lot. That was hard. But it was just, you find the balance, you find that time, you interact with them as much as possible. And I always felt kind of guilty about how much I worked when they were little. And I was telling my daughter that the other day. I said, sometimes I wish that I hadn't worked and I had just stayed home and read to y'all all the time and never. And my daughter said, "Are you kidding me? You spent way more time with me than most of the people I know's parents did. So you were fine. You did not. I think it would have been too much if you hadn't have worked." So I think I might have been an accidental helicopter mom otherwise. So it was good.
So do you have any challenge that really in your career buckled you somewhat?
I would say, the challenging thing is trying to decide on a publisher. And so, for example, with these 2 books, these children's books that are coming out, I had several publishers that were interested in publishing them. But then I got to the point where I thought, self-publishing is really an easy thing to do now. And there's so many opportunities online for marketing. There's so much opportunity to market in conferences, and especially with this preschool series, I really want them to get into the Title I schools where there's characters in the book that look like everybody, and it's just, I think it's going to be a good educational product that children will be able to identify with. Every character in the book has something special about them that, that's unique to them. One's a tomboy, and one's really into sports, and another one's really into art. And so they have all these different personality characteristics. And I just decided, self-publishing is the better way to go, because then I have more autonomy over what happens in the books, how quickly they can get published. So a publisher, sometimes they take a whole year before you will see the book in print. If I self-publish, once the book is finished, I can get it in print within a few months. And so I can, produce several books in a year rather than just waiting on a publisher. Now, publishers are great. I think, going with a regular publisher is wonderful. But really just having more authority over the product, where it goes, how quickly it gets done. I would say that would probably have been the most frustrating thing, is waiting for a product to be published. I finished my botany book in in 2015, the second edition for it, and it didn't get published until 2020.
Oh, wow.
That was a long time to wait. And just the publisher had other things in the pipeline, and so I've decided to go rogue, to go out on my own.
So
That'll
if
be fun.
somebody's listening right now and they're thinking about publishing a book, what's kind of the first step? I mean, how do you write a book? I don't know how you write a book.
You have to write a lot of text.
You do.
I think, so for my series, I already have an audience. So it's a little bit easier for me to get my book into the hands of people. But what you want to do is you want to get beta readers. So when you start writing, you must have a good editor. That's the most important thing, because you will miss things that you did not. You will miss things over and over and over again.
And then they sometimes still get missed.
Yeah, they do. They do. They do. I recommend having 2 editors. But you want to get it into beta readers' hands, because your beta readers will give you great feedback, because especially if you're going to self-publish, because publishers sort of feel like they are the gatekeepers. They make sure that only good stuff gets out to the public, relevant stuff. But really, they have ideas of what's going to sell, which may actually not be what you're writing, but you know that you have an audience for what you're writing. You're interested in it. You love the topic, so you know you have an audience because you are the audience for it as well. And so you want to make sure you get beta readers, and that you get those. You can get them on Facebook. You can get them on just friends groups, ask people around. And when you get a beta reader, you're going to get feedback, but also you're going to get a fan. So when you have someone who likes what you've written, because they're your beta reader, they're your first fan, and guess what? Word of mouth is the #1 way that books get sold, is word of mouth. And also just be aware that it usually takes 3 years after the publication date for a book to take. So I think even Harry Potter.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
so,
interesting.
You just have to be patient. Continue with the marketing. Yeah, exactly.
So if you could go back, money no object, place you're going to live no object, and you could be anything that you wanted to be, what would it be? We always ask this question, by the way, because we love the interest. Somebody was a window squeeger. Squeegee.
Really?
Or
That was their
squeegeer.
big dream?
Yeah, she wanted to be a window
scary.
squeegeer.
That would be a scarier one. Well, I wanted to write books since I was a little kid, and I wrote my first book and bound it in board and covered it when I was 10 years old. So my first fiction book that I wrote, it was about a rabbit who was gold, and anyway, it was a cute little story. Really didn't have a moral, but. But I would say that I really always wanted to be a book author, but I didn't want to write science textbooks, and I actually didn't want to. I really just wanted to be Danielle Steele.
Okay,
I was about to say, what other genre would you have written?
I wanted to live in San Francisco and write and look at the ocean and write romance novels. But that's just was not in the cards for me. So
It sounds pretty fun, though.
yeah, doesn't that sound fun?
It does.
Hey, one of these days, you never know.
Yeah, who knows? I'm enjoying working with illustrators with these children's books, because writing is kind of a solitary craft. I mean, really, you don't spend much time interacting with people. You're at home just writing. But when you're working with illustrators, you're actually, my illustrator for the preschool book is a friend from, I grew up in Austin, and she's a friend of mine from Austin. She was one of my best friends in high school, so it's really fun to be working with somebody as a writer, so I'm excited about that. So it's all worked out.
That's fun. I've always wanted to write myself, and here I am.
You can do it.
I've started, I just never finished. But I will sometime.
Yeah.
When I have nothing else to do.
They say the best time to write is first thing in the morning before your brain gets filled with the world.
Okay.
You have a fresh mind, it's fresh from dream world, and you just go straight into writing. Just mark out 30 minutes every day, and you will get a book done.
That's awesome.
Interesting. Great advice.
So if, gosh, I was about to ask you a question. I hate it when that happens, because then you're like, okay. Oh yeah. What is next for Jeannie?
Well, I would say I'm really excited about these elementary science books. I want to have I have all these elementary, the preschool science, and then the elementary historical time travel series. I just want to have the historical time travel. I want to have 5 books for ancient history, 5 books for the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, 5 books for Renaissance, Reformation, 5 books for American history, and then maybe I feel like the first book, as people, I have over 120 beta readers for that. That was, really fun, great feedback. But I'd really like for these books they're a little bit higher in level than Magic Treehouse, but they're a similar concept. So I would say maybe they're the next step after Magic Treehouse if you want to do a historical time travel book.
We had every Magic Treehouse book under the sun.
Oh, we did too.
My son was
we
a big
do
Magic
too.
Treehouse
We
reader.
still do. My kids are in their 20s. I've tried to save a lot of our favorite books for my grandkids. So.
Well, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, or they wanted to find some of your textbooks for their private school or for their homeschool, how do they get in touch with you?
So my website's Jeannie Fulbright, and it's JeannieFulbright.com, and I have a contact form there, and I am always pretty quickly get back to people. If you have any questions about homeschooling, if you have any questions about writing books, if you have any questions about science, or my other books that are coming out, I would love to chat with you. So thank you.
Well, it was wonderful to visit with you today, and I learned a lot.
Thank you.
I think that is just extraordinary, all of the publications that you've got out there.
Thank you.
And is there anything we didn't ask you that you wish we had?
Well, it's funny. I think we talked about what who was most inspirational for me, and I thought about that a lot. And I think it's kind of funny. This is kind of out there, but I think about Beatrix Potter.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that.
Really?
I mean, I've got the whole collection and all the books. I grew up. I've loved Beatrix Potter.
Her story is amazing. Just how she was unmarried and really just wanted to write these books, and people just didn't think that
she could do it.
That she could do it. That a female, because this is the 1800s, that a female could produce books that would actually be popular, and she became self-sufficient. She was perfectly capable, and it's just a beautiful story.
Well, and her cottage is beautiful too. I don't know if you've ever been, but when I was in college, I did a Baylor and London program with my school, with Baylor, and we got to go to her house.
Wow.
Which, growing up, like I said, I read all her books. I loved them.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh, I would love. Okay, that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it's really,
sure.
really fun to go do.
Yeah.
Good.
So, thank you so much for your time and for flying in from Georgia to be with us. I mean, obviously, we'll have a little fun while you're here. We had an excuse for you to come, and we're glad you're here.
Did.
So, thank
I'm so
you.
glad to be here. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us as well. And don't forget, call Craig Schrank with Willow Bend Mortgage should you ever have a mortgage need. We appreciate him as a friend and as a sponsor, a longtime friend, right? Like for me, over 25 years.
Yeah.
25 years, a long time. But thank you again for joining us. I'm Caralee.
I'm Stacy.
And we are your real estate professionals.
Thank you for joining us on North Texas Networkers.
Visit our website, mariposagroupdfw.com. That's MARIPOSA Group DFW.com for more information about the show and other resources. I'm Caralee.
And I'm Stacy.
And we are your real estate professionals.